And well, this episode we're going to be talking about the tragic story, and it's a story that I did a video on actually on my YouTube channel maybe a year ago. It's the story of James Younger, and he's the 7-year-old boy who's involved in a courtroom case battle between his two parents. Uh, the mother, who has been raising him up with the forced idea that he's actually a girl since the age of 3, and the father who claims that in his presence this boy acts as a boy, and that all this gender confusion, quote unquote, has been foisted upon him, been forced upon him by the mother, who is not actually his biological mother, but that's beside the point. I don't think that's relevant. Some conservative outlets have pointed it out, like I was listening to Matt Walsh. He did a really good episode on this. And he's the one that brought the story back to my attention. Allie Beth Stuckey, also on her podcast Relatable, talked about it. This has been in and out of the news for about a year. The basics of the story is that this young boy, James, his mother is a pediatrician, and like Matt Walsh, I'll put mother in quotation marks because the woman is actually, I would agree with him, a total monster. I mean, this is an abomination of a human being here. Somebody who is obviously, vicariously living their fantasies through their child in a dark and sick, twisted way. This is the perfect example of where the government organization Children and Youth should be involved in separating the parent from child. This woman has intentionally gone out of her way to raise James up as a girl, with the female name Luna. Now, all of the evidence seems to suggest that the boy is obviously very confused, but his confusion lies in just the simple desire that any child would have to fit in or please his parents. So it seems to be that, and by the way, the parents are separated. The court case is in regards to who will gain full custody of James. I think the final pronouncement was that this demented woman, this shrew that is ruining this child's life, is now going to get full custody, and that the father, who it turns out actually is sacrificially loving his son, and just wants the son to, how crazy, just to let the son be happy in himself and who he is. What an insane idea this father has. How selfish of him to just want the child to be himself and be happy. Now, I realize there's a lot of people on the left that would say that I'm being a hypocrite here. I can say that of the father, but not the mother. Is that not what the mother's doing? No, that is not what the mother's doing. The mother has chosen, since this child was 3 years old, to dress him up in women's clothing. There's been testimony from friends of the family and the father and the child himself, admitting and testifying to circumstances that when he was with the mother, she would lock him in his bedroom and tell him that there was a monster in there. This is when he was 3 years old. There was a monster in there that only eats little boys. She would dress him up as a girl, basically is grooming him to have gender dysphoria. So this is not a child that is born with gender dysphoria, but rather one that has had it forced upon him. Of all the most dark and sick and twisted things, this woman does not love her child. This is not love. And the fact that she's a pediatrician is an outrage. I mean, she should be stripped of her medical licenses and put in a white room with a straitjacket. I mean, she is a freaking abomination. This is disgusting. This is not love. And the father, by all accounts of friends of the family, other relatives, and the father himself, when the child is with the dad, he acts and behaves as a boy. And when he's with the mother, then he puts on the women's clothing and all of a sudden he's Luna. This is not gender dysphoria to anyone with half a working brain. What this is a child who just wants to appease both parents. And can you blame him? I mean, he's going through a very traumatic situation in that his parents are divorcing and are splitting up. His family is breaking apart. It's incredibly natural that this child would then want to please the mother and please the father. And if the mother's telling him at such a young age that to please me, basically by inference, he knows that to please her, he must dress as a girl and behave as Luna, and then he can act like himself around his father, would he not do both? Of course he would. This is not gender dysphoria again. This is just a child trying to please and fit in and make the best of a very damnable situation that has come about outside of his control, and he's trying to make the best of it. He's trying to have a happy, loving relationship with both of his parents. And it just so happens that the only way he could do that is to follow along with the twisted, demented, satanic claims, or not claims, but go down that route that his mother has laid out for him. The great love of the mother who has blueprinted for her child from birth. She knows how he shall be. She's determined that he'll be a woman. And the sad, sick thing is that one day this child will grow up and be transgender, and he'll be able to look everybody in the eye and say, from my earliest memory, I struggled with gender identity. Well, yeah, in a sense you did, because you were forced to. It wasn't natural. You were forced to. And this isn't just something that is exclusive to or just only is happening in the younger family with James. You look no further than social media. There are other parents that are doing this to their children, that are outright exploiting their children to cash in on a new trend. Look at the young child star. What is it? Desmond. Desmond is spectacular or something like that. An 11-year-old boy, Desmond, hashtag Desmond. You can see him on YouTube. He's been all over Twitter. He's been in the news. It's nothing unusual. Or, I mean, it's nothing unusual to see him. Now, to actually see him should be something unusual. The kid is a drag queen at the age of 11. There was a video online of him dancing sexually and provocatively in a gay bar for grown, drunk, gay men on a stage like a stripper, and these men were coming forward and putting dollar bills down the front of this 11-year-old boy's pants as he danced sexually, suggestively, and provocatively for them. If you don't believe me, their video was out there. You can go and watch it. And yet, these parents are just letting this child be who he is. No, they are intentionally pushing him in this direction. People and friends of the family have come out and said that of Desmond's parents. Just do a little research on it and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm not making that up. I've read into his case. There are other child stars of the same ilk. There was a picture that came out of Desmond also hanging out with an adult drag queen, I think who was in his mid-20s, talking about using drugs. And then there was a picture that was leaked of Desmond also with another male drag queen naked with his penis 6 inches from Desmond's head, naked, standing next to an 11-year-old boy, an underage, a minor. This is pedophilia being passed off as normal in the situation of Desmond, and then outright child abuse being passed off as normal, as loving, as caring. In this case of James Younger, who I think, if I remember right, the court case it was determined that the mother would have full custody of all the warped scenarios. That child is damned. end. He's screwed at this point. And now the father cannot visit him, cannot see him without supervision from somebody like child services or something like that, children and youth. I mean, he cannot, because he sees what the mother is doing as damaging to the child, to his son, his biological son, because she's not even the biological mother. He fears for his son's well-being. Because of that, he can't visit his son anymore or have any kind of positive influence on him as a fatherly role model of any kind, unless there is supervision there to make sure that he is not damaging his son. If this is not the case in point definition of what the Bible talks about when a society calls good evil and evil good, then I don't know what is. To add even further gasoline onto the fire of this young child's damnation at the hands of his mother is that the mother is now, or has been working towards having him chemically castrated, I think, within the next couple years. I mean, they are making decisions that will permanently alter and destroy this child's life on a whim. On an absolute whim. There is no way that you can say that there is a medical consensus here, or a medically based decision that has been made objectively and fairly to say that this child has gender dysphoria. And even if he did have gender dysphoria, to say that he should make it, his mom in his place should make a decision like that for him that could permanently alter and warp and destroy his life forever, is just sickening. It's demented in the worst possible way. Matt Walsh did write a good review of this case on the Daily Wire, and I want to read through a couple little parts of it. Referring to the father, Jeff has been locked in a bitter court battle with his ex-wife, Ann Georgelis. Despite being a medical professional, she's a pediatrician. Matt Walsh says, God help us, and I agree. Who presumably understands basic facts about human biology and child psychology, Anne got it into her apparently deranged head that her son James is really a girl. As the Texan previously reported, the factors that convinced Anne that her son is really her daughter include his affinity for the movie Frozen. This is her rational explanation, or her rational epistemology. How did she come to this belief that her son is a girl? Because he has an affinity for the movie Frozen and his request to get a girl toy one time when he was at McDonald's. Are you freaking kidding me? This woman should be locked in a cage. I mean, you're going to chemically castrate a child who's 7 years old. Even if she does it to him when he's 10, she's making the decision to chemically castrate him at 7 years old because he likes the movie Frozen and asked for a girl's toy at McDonald's. That he probably didn't even know the difference between a girl and a boy toy at McDonald's. He just saw the toy and thought it was cool. Are you an idiot? She also says he started expressing a wish to dress in girls' clothing, but Jeff Younger, the father, recently explained in an interview, and I would recommend the interview. I forget the name of the podcast, but it's on social media, and this father just pours his heart out on this podcast interview about this desperate situation that their family is in because of the deranged actions. I can't even speak to keep up with my rage over this. Check out the podcast though that he's on. It's pretty provocative. It's pretty enlightening. If you want to get a really clear idea of what's going on behind the scenes. But the father says James if he ever had a desire to wear a dress, it's only because his mother started putting him in dresses and painting his nails when he was just 3 years old. So what do you think? If you are dressing your boy as a girl that early at such a young age and painting his toenails and fingernails, locking him in his bedroom and saying there's monsters in there that only eat little boys when he's 3 years old, is it any wonder that he's then, when he's with the mother, expressing an affinity for girlish things? And as I said before, particularly during such a bitter family breakup, where a child's natural instinct, natural desire is to just have a family, just a unified family. So when he's with the mother, he's going to try to please the mother. When he's with the father, he's going to try to please the father. This is not gender dysphoria. This is just the natural instinct of a child to get along with his parents. I mean, could this am I the only one that's seeing this? The father claims that the mother used several other methods of manipulation, including locking the boy in his room and telling him that, quote, the monsters only eat boys. Jeff speculates that Anne would withhold affection from James if he did not act like a girl. The court case revolved around Jeff's efforts to rescue his son, James, and his twin brother from the abuse of this sick and twisted woman. These are Matt Walsh's words, but I fully support them. However, the decision was passed down yesterday, and the court ruled against the father. Virtually all control over James and his brother have been handed over to this sick menace of a wife. Mother. She is free to continue James's social transition into a girl, a process already well underway as he goes by, quote, Luna, and poses as a girl at his mother's house and at school. Eventually she can, and presumably will, start James on drugs to chemically castrate him. And there is nothing his father can do to stop it, short of, quote, kidnapping the boy and fleeing the country, a move that would be not only morally justified, but heroic. And that's Matt Walsh's opinion, but again, I agree. I don't know if every society reaches this point as it collapses, but why is it always the children that are getting screwed? Just look at look at what we hand the children today. As soon as the wife conceives, that's not a child in the womb. That's just a blob. So even if your child is fortunate enough to beat the odds and make it through pregnancy without being sucked out through a tube or partially birthed and scissors jammed into the back of his or her skull and his or her brains being vacuumed out, or burned alive with acid, or pulled apart by tongs and then rearranged out on a platter after he's been dismembered. Even if your child makes it through such a landmine of odds against him or her, just in 9 months, even if they make it through that, then they're being dropped out into a world that clearly does not give a crap about them, and usually they're being raised by, well, not always. There's a lot of good parents out there. I don't mean to overgeneralize as I typically do. But just look at the situation. Then they're dropped into a school system which has intentionally kicked God out of it. So then we're no longer made in the image of God. We're just blobs out there. We're highly advanced bacteria. We're fully evolved fish or amoebas or whatever, or simians. Nobody ever seems to be able to explain why we still have monkeys. If we evolved from them, why are they not evolving? Anyway, but so we're not made in the image of God. These kids have just been told that they have no more value than a squirrel out there on the streets. Their brother or their sister, when they see their mother pregnant, let's say I'm a 5-year-old child and I see, oh, mom's pregnant, but there's no value to that. What is that inside there? Oh, that's your baby sister. Oh, really? Okay, then why did you kill the one right before that one? Oh, we just weren't ready yet. So is that my baby sister in there, or is it just a blob? Well, it's your baby sister and a blob. There's no common sense there, So the kid doesn't understand. Nobody can explain, but then you listen to some of the politicians, like I think it was Dianne Feinstein and some of the others, when they speak to children at elementary schools, they talk to them about abortion as if it's just like going to the dentist, but that's still your baby sister in there. But it's just like going to the dentist and getting rid of a toothache, pulling a tooth that was rotted and needed to come out. So they're inconsistent at best. To talk about sending inconsistent messages to your children. On the one hand, that's your baby sister in there, feel him or her kick. But then then on the other hand, if we're just not ready for the child, we're going to kill them. And in that case, it's a blob. Okay. And then they go through public school and all that kind of stuff. And from their earliest age now, they're being told that they should play around with gender roles, with their sexuality. Children have no idea what a gender role is to begin with. So imagine how warping that is to a developing mind who's barely able to process the fact that it has a wiener to pee into the toilet with. In fact, it's wearing diapers half the time up until 5. I know. I have a 4-year-old that's still struggling with the concept. And now you're gonna take these impressionable young minds that have no concept of the outside world and tell them, play around with your sexuality, play around with your genders. Are you freaking kidding me? I mean, this, and then we wonder why there is so much trauma, why there is so much confusion, why kids are shooting other kids in the schools. We give them social media and just let them play with abandon on social media. No parental restraints most of the time. And these kids learn to covet what each other and to be jealous of other kids. They learn that how somebody is perceived on social media is the apex of their day and of their self-esteem. And if they're fat or not model or don't have perfect hair or perfect teeth or a perfect bosom, then they have no value. They have no worth. They should have no self-esteem. That's not just something that they internalize on their own. That's something that other kids tell them because they get that idea just from watching TV, from being on social media, from being on the internet. Yet we know this. I mean, this is widely reported on in the news and in society as a whole. Parents know this. I talk to parents all the time who are like, "Oh yeah, social media, it's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah, it's not good." And yet our kids are on there constantly, and there really is not much parental restraint at all. And then we wonder why they're so depressed, why they're so alienated, why their idea of what would provide happiness, or what when we talk to them about self-esteem issues, you know, that we're both of us, that both you and the teenager are completely talking past each other. Because their definition, their idea of what self-esteem is and what constitutes self-esteem, what builds it and what breaks it down, is entirely different than yours. Theirs isn't an entirely one based off of peer expression, or not expression, but perception, what your peers think of you. But it's become so much more internalized, or externalized, I should say, in just purely physical. And adults, just because we've moved past those teenage years and we don't spend as much time on social media, you know, it's like a different language, not understanding. And so they become more isolated. And then all this time on the internet, you begin hearing, reading messages, things that, you know, most parents would not want their kids reading or hearing or believing or seeing. And all this stuff has an effect. The music, which glorifies violence and sex, and in rap music, the ideal is having money, banging women, and shooting the people that look wrong at you when you're crossing the street. If you make eye contact with somebody, they just challenged you on your turf. Give me a break. And then the proper response is to kick their teeth in, make them bite the curb, take their girl, and then shoot them if they come back to questioning you later. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that they're hearing just in the average rap song. And then you play video games like Grand Theft Auto, where you're taught that the best thing to do, the funniest thing in the game, is to pick up a prostitute, watch the car bounce up and down, let her get out, kill her, take your money back, and drive off. Kids 13, 14 years old are playing these games constantly. And that's just one of the games out there. Not to mention all the demonic games. And then we wonder why our children are so askew in the world. They have, from the very beginning, they have no foundation, and then they just drift further off port as they grow older. And then just think, where will somebody like James Younger be in 10, 15, 20 years? Where Desmond is spectacular, or wherever that 11-year-old, where will he be in 20 years? I mean, what kind of effect will this have on him permanently for the rest of his life? All because of the selfishness of these parents. Desmond's parents are making money off of this kid, this 11-year-old drag queen. Excuse me. And there are others like him. He's not the only one. Uh, and I'm sure most of you have heard about Drag Queen Story Hour. These drag queens that, I mean, is this even worth talking about? Is it even worth discussing or debating? Who in their right mind thinks that it's a good idea to have Drag Queen Story Hour? I mean, what are we going to have next? Pedophilia Story Hour? I mean, who would defend that? And yet there are people that defend it. That's how morally debased we've become. Pedophilia has become, there's movements, little bits of it popping up here and there, normalizing the idea and the concept of pedophilia. And people may hate me for saying this, but I fully believe that it's logically consistent that pedophilia be the next thing to be normalized, because we as a society as a whole, when you get rid of objective morality, you have no foundation for your morality, and then you say that whatever your sexual orientation is, that's just who you are, and that and then at the same time you tell children and young adults that not only is your sexuality just who you are and you should embrace it, but embracing it and being true to yourself is also the ultimate good, and is how you should live your life. It is the apex of civilization, of a societal good, is a society of people that are true to themselves regardless of who or what that is or what it may mean, and just tossing out any idea of moral restraint or moral betterment or confession or forgiveness or repentance or sanctification or any of these things. Toss them out. Whoever you are right now is who you should be. And to change would be to compromise yourself at your most inner being. That's why I say that there is no grounds then for condemning pedophilia, or condemning what those parents are doing to Desmond, or condemning James Younger's mother. You can't, because what she's doing is just allowing him to be himself as she sees it. It's the same for the transgender kid, Desmond's parents. It's the same for pedophiles now. How do you say a pedophile is wrong objectively? That's a wrong thing to be, a pedophile. If the pedophile is not actively molesting children, then how is he wrong? You know, that's what they're starting to say, that if a pedophile doesn't molest children, then he can still live as a pedophile. That's perfectly acceptable. Just don't actually molest children. You can write stories about it. You can fantasize about it. You can do all sorts of sick things with yourself in the bedroom, fantasizing, remembering past experiences, all these sorts of things. But just as long as you're not actively molesting children, you're fine. I mean, this is a dark road that we're headed down, and I agree with Matt Walsh that with this story of James Younger, we've crossed a threshold in the court ruling that the father has no interaction with the child. It's just totally cut the kid adrift, and it seems like there would be no ultimate hope for him in the end. We can only pray for him, and I join Matt Walsh in the hashtag Protect James Younger. I think everybody should float that and get it trending, and pray for this child tonight. And indeed for Desmond and all the others that are trapped innocently in this. They have no hand in it, and they certainly don't know any better. How could they? How could they? These are the people that are supposed to be teaching them about morals and values, and look what they're doing to them. Anyway, that's my rant about that. We'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, good night, and God be with you.